All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Wednesday, May 28th, and this is your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns, presented to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson, and this is All in Horns. Now, we are fully aware that there is softball, there is baseball going on. We were going to try to carve out a little bit of time. We mentioned last week that we didn't get to fully cover the college football playoff format changes that they made to the extent into the details that we wanted to talk about it. And so we said we were going to use an episode next week, kind of middle of the week. Well, it is middle of the week, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, what was going to be on the docket today, you can kind of see Jake's setup slightly different than what it normally is. Having a rough night tonight at night of recording. This is also Tuesday night, so we just witnessed the Stars game and them a losing effort to go down 3-1. And so both of us not in the best of happiest of moods. But the game plan was, hey, we'll come out. Last week we talked about the clickbait of Greg McElroy and Joel Klatt's top 10 quarterbacks going into college football next year. And we were going to make our own top 10 list. I have my top 10 list. Jake was trying to make his top 10 list. And Jake, just tell everybody about how your night is going.
Yeah. So, normally I try to make it at lunchtime, or at least get it started at lunchtime at work. I didn't get that today because as we mentioned last week, I'm heading down to Texas this weekend to see you and go golfing with some friends and do all that. So I'm very busy at work trying to get ready, for a very short week this week with being off Monday. So I'm like, I'll just take care of it, when I get home or during the intermission of the Stars games, 20-minute intermissions, get an hour of intermissions. Very easy to wrap those kind of things up. Well, go to flip on my computer downstairs. I'm not downstairs, if you can't tell, not in the mom's basement, in the wife's office today, which is why there's a green colored wall.
Do you have your own space anywhere, Jake?
I do. The whole basement is a man cave.
Your mom's basement is
my basement is or our basement, I should say. Me and my wife's house is my man cave. But go to turn on my computer and all the lights, got a bunch of LED lights on it. It's a gaming computer. Everything sparks up like normal. Then in about 2 seconds, everything shuts down. And I'm like, that's not good.
It's not a great
Already
sign.
not in a really good mood because the Stars should have been up by about 3 goals after the first period. And instead, they're somehow down 1, which feels like I'm repeating myself from almost every game this series, other than the game they won. And so, yeah, then all of a sudden I hear really loud fan noise. And I'm like, none of my fans are on. This is not good. So something's wrong with my power supply and my computer's fried. It won't turn on. I took it apart, tried anything I knew I could do or looked up and could do. I'm fairly tech savvy and could not figure it out. So I got to take it in and probably get a new power supply. And I'm hoping that's it because I just put a really nice new graphics card in it like a year and a half ago. That is spent a bunch of money on. If that got fried from this, well, you might not hear from me again on this show. So it's been a very bad. Did
you call your bug guy?
Yeah. And then somehow there was a tick latched in my leg. Must have got it when I was doing yard work this weekend or something. Because there was a tick in my leg and I felt like a bite and I was scratching my leg. I was like, oh my God, this itches. And then I was like, it feels like there's like a skin tag on the, what the hell is this? And then I kind of pull it and then I look, I'm like, there was a bug in my leg. And I start looking it up, like, is this a bug bed or bed bug? And I was like, it kind of looks like that, but not really. And then I look up a tick and I'm like, oh, that's a tick.
That's a tick.
I never had that happen before. And I'm like, what is this? What is this evening?
Yeah. The whole night it wasn't necessarily like a rough night for me. I've been trying to get the house ready for the company coming over tonight or this weekend.
Sounds like a special group of people.
Yeah, very special people, excluding yourself. But yeah, just trying to the house kind of ready. I had, yard work to do. And so I mowed and kind of was just sprucing up the place, making sure that it's kind of good to go for this weekend and stuff, even though we're not even going to be here this weekend. But yeah. And so, and then just with the Stars and everything else kind of happening. And, but again, we'll get into all the sports stuff, but that's kind of an update as to kind of where we're at in our own lives. But yeah, Jake having a rough go at it tonight.
This is the first time in our entire time doing this where I can honestly say I do not want to be here right now.
Yeah, we're
Full
gonna
transparency.
Yeah, and so honestly, you'll get a very good look at how we record these episodes, and so Jake's rest of the week is basically going to be this. He'll probably be in a little bit of a crabby mood for the remainder of the episodes this week for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But essentially, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead, dive into we have our top 10 quarterback list. Jake does not because he obviously didn't get into it. We're just going to push that another week. That's off-season clickbait stuff anyway. So we'll go ahead and push that to another week where he can kind of sit down and actually get his list together. But we are going to discuss the new college football playoff format. Essentially, it was everything that Jake and I wanted to happen as the season. We could kind of see the writing on the wall as the season was progressing, Jake, as we got deeper into the regular season. And, the seeding started to play out, and Boise State was making the run that Boise State was making. And we're thinking, oh man, are they going to have a bye week? Like we were already kind of thinking like whoever gets the 5 seed is going to get an easy, clear shot to the semifinal. Now we didn't really plan that for the 6 seed. And that's kind of where we had the 5 and 6 where Texas and Penn State both lost their conference championship game and ended up with an easier road than the conference championship winners in Georgia and Oregon. And so basically, here's kind of what the new playoff system is going to look like. Essentially, still a 12-team playoff seeded by the final season ranking post conference tournament or post the conference championship games. Every conference champ gets an automatic bye. So the ACC, Big 10, Big 12, the SEC, and the G5 get your top seeds or get the auto bids. And then this does avoid that kind of 5-6 scenario that I was talking about, getting the easiest bids, which would have been Texas and Penn State last year. But this also includes Notre Dame. Independents can now be top 4 seed. If Notre Dame is the number 1, number 2 team in the country, they're going to get an automatic bye, and they'll get that first round bye. So here's kind of what it would have looked like. Hypothetical scenario. If this year's playoffs in 2024 would have resonated with the 2025 playoff system that we're going to have next year. Yes, this is being implemented next season, this upcoming season. Oregon would have had the bye as the 1 seed. 2 seed would have been Georgia with a bye. 3 seed would have been Texas with a bye. 4 seed would have been Penn State with a bye. So your Big 12 or your Big 10 and your SEC championship opponents would have all had a first round bye and would have been the top 4 seeds. Your 5 seed would have been Notre Dame versus 12 seed Clemson. Your 6 seed would be Ohio State taking on 11 seed Arizona State. 7-seeded Tennessee taking on 10-seeded SMU, and 8-seeded Indiana taking on 9-seeded Boise State. I think the 7-10 and the 8-9 matchups, Jake, would have been so much better in this format and are going to be so much better come next season than they were this last year.
Yeah, and that'd have been an interesting situation for Notre Dame too. The team that goes to the title playing that Clemson team.
Yeah.
I mean, dare I say, I may think Clemson wins that game just because I think Cade Klubnik proved he could put together that type of performance against a top defense.
Are you saying that Gunnar Stockton isn't the same caliber of quarterback as Cade Klubnik?
Yeah, I am in fact saying that. And I mean, yeah, I almost that was kind of the first game that jumped out to me. I was like, whoa. We could have maybe had an upset on the road in that case, just not because I'm trying to down Notre Dame. They made a national championship game. You can't take that away from them, but just matchup wise.
Yeah, they beat
Georgia. Georgia was a good, we said that going, I picked Notre Dame to win that game, if I recall correctly. And it was because I thought they matched up really well against them. Because football sometimes, especially for certain teams that maybe aren't a all around complete team, just kind of how we thought Georgia was just a really bad matchup for Texas
Yeah.
because of what they could take away. And Texas just not being able to get that back. And Georgia was a very bad matchup for Texas. Notre Dame was a very good matchup into Georgia. I don't think they were a great matchup against a team like Clemson. That'd have been a much more exciting first game than what we got in the Notre Dame Indiana. But for me, if it was my choice, this would be the playoff format. It would not be tinkered with from here. I don't think you need to add more teams. I mean, if you're going to make it 16, I guess whatever. I can't sit here and say I have a problem with that completely. Whenever I've said, FCS has a system, D2, D3, and
Yeah.
AI. Well, most of those are 16 to 24 teams. So, I get the argument for a 16 team, but I think with the way Division One, FBS football is, 12 teams with this seeding format is perfect. I think that first round of games would have been much more interesting. And it is just really interesting to look at it from a hypothetical point of view, because at the very least, you can sit there and say Texas is not making it as far because they would play the team that they lost to
Yep.
in the second round.
Yep. No.
And I don't think them just coming off a bye means they're going to play any better. They played their worst game of the playoff, in the second round.
Yeah. No, Jake, I agree. I think that Indiana Boise State game in Indiana would have hosted a playoff game. I think that would have been just a really fun matchup between those two teams. And I
Really
think,
interesting matchup stylistically.
yeah, I just think it would have been freezing cold weather. It would have been that sort of environment. Indiana actually had a pretty decent home crowd this year at their home games. I think Tennessee, SMU. I think Tennessee probably wins that game. I just think the moment was too big for SMU. Just in general, they looked very, very bad against Penn State. So it's hard for me to be like, oh yeah, SMU would have just turned it around against Tennessee. I don't think that would
Not
have been.
against that Tennessee defense.
Yeah, and so here's kind of the scenario played out. So I would have had Notre Dame beating Clemson, and I'd have Notre Dame playing Penn State in the second round. I would have had Ohio State beating Arizona State, Ohio State playing Texas in the second round. I would have had Tennessee beating SMU, playing Georgia, and I would have had Boise State beating that Indiana team, because I think Boise State, I don't think people realize they played Penn State pretty well. A couple of plays go their way. And I just think, again, matchup wise, Penn State's defense and their front seven was just too much for the run heavy Boise State team. I think Boise State probably matches up size wise, physicality wise against Indiana a little bit better, and then goes on to play an Oregon team, Jake, who they only lost by like 3 points in week 1 in the regular season too. I think that would have been an interesting round 2 game, Oregon and Boise State.
Yeah, no, I mean, for Boise State, ironically, a team that kind of got talked about benefiting a lot from this kind of format, I think it ended up being where they would have probably had a little bit better of a bracket layout, just because Penn State was, again, you talk about those matchups. When you're a team that has some deficiencies, which most teams are, even when you get to a playoff situation, that is a better matchup for Boise State objectively
Jake,
against Indiana.
with my hypothetical situation, did you have any rebuttals of who would win those
I
games?
I think Clemson would beat Notre Dame, and I'm gonna take heat for that, and that's fine. I deserve it. I get it. They made a national title, but I think matchups are kind of everything when you get to this point, especially when you're not talking about a team like Ohio State, who everything was clicking. I think every single team in the playoff that was not Ohio State showed major flaws.
Yeah.
That's why no one else won. And that's why no one else was really that competitive with Ohio State outside of Texas, who probably was the second most talented team when you consider the injuries Georgia had in the playoffs. If Georgia was healthy, they were without a doubt probably the team that could have given Ohio State the best shot. But considering their injury situation, which you can't change in this hypothetical, it's just the seeding. I actually think it would have shook out a lot differently. And then those matchups become key. And I think Clemson would have matched up really well with Notre. If they were able to give Texas's defense the issues they did, Texas had the best defense in the playoffs, other than maybe Ohio State, who won it all. I have no doubt that they would have been able to score points. And I don't trust Notre Dame's offense because they can't throw the football.
Right.
Which, granted, that was Clemson's weakness against Texas, to be fair. But Texas did have a much better throwing attack.
I just think Notre Dame would have just been able to kind of manhandle and push around Clemson a little bit. Is kind of my thing, especially in the run game. I think that Riley Leonard would have been able to, and then Julian Love would have been able to just kind of power their way through that defense. And as the game went on, I think they would have gotten more and more worn out. I think last year Clemson was a year away. I think going into this year, this is Clemson's year. I think they're probably going to be ranked top 3, top 2 in the country going into the season. I mean, last year was just kind of like we're almost there type year. And then the way they played against Texas, I think a lot of people are going to jump on the Clemson train very early on coming into this upcoming season. Last year, I just don't think that they were ready really against anybody, except maybe, again, SMU, Indiana, Boise State, some of those lower tier teams. I think Arizona State maybe would have even, taken care of them. They were just playing really hot at the time. But anyway, going into the second round, matchups are Notre Dame versus Penn State. I have Notre Dame winning that game. I think, again, matchup wise, I think that would have been probably the ugliest game of this playoff system. I just think stylistically, these two teams playing against one another would have just been a really ugly football game. Would have been defensive. If you're a defensive fan, probably would have been fun. But Ohio State versus Texas, we saw that one play out in real life. I'm not going to change the results. I've got Ohio State advancing. So ironically enough, Jake, like you mentioned, Texas actually not advancing as far in this new format than they did last season, and while getting a better seed. Tennessee versus Georgia, I've got Georgia winning that one just because, again, Nico Emiliava is just, he was terrible in that Ohio State game. I have a very tough time believing that he would have just led Tennessee if they didn't have to play Ohio State.
We also saw that matchup during the season, and I see it playing out the same exact way.
The exact same way. And then Boise State, Oregon, which again, this was a 3 or a 6 point game, week 2 of the regular season or week 1 of the regular season. And it was a very fun game, and it was kind of Ashton Genty's like coming out like, he's like, this is a legit Heisman contender. But I would have had Oregon beating Boise State, and Oregon actually advancing to the Final Four. So your semifinalist, your Final Four in this format, in my hypothetical scenario, would have been Notre Dame taking on Oregon, Ohio State taking on Georgia. I think Ohio State beats Georgia. I think Oregon beats Notre Dame. And it would have been Ohio State, Oregon in the national championship game, actually. I think Oregon probably gets their doors blown off just like they did in real life. Again, I'm not changing any of the results for Ohio State. I'm not taking anything away from them. They would have had to play Oregon, and they would have had to play Texas, in this same format, 2 teams that they beat fair and square head to head.
Their road would have been harder because I also think they would have had to gone against Georgia. So Ohio State would have had a much tougher road for sure. Maybe they've been a little more beat up come Oregon, and that would have at least made that game a little closer. But Oregon, if anything, is the one that can sit there and really look at because Texas, ironically, a lot of people thought Texas benefited from the way the format worked out. Actually, they were probably the biggest benefit of this. Oregon was probably the biggest detriment from this.
Yep.
And so it's just,
and that's just not fair. You can't lose your conference championship game, be a 5 seed, and then end up turning around and looking at the number 1 overall team who won their conference and be like, yeah, Texas has a better road to get to a national championship than Oregon does.
Yeah, and what I was trying to say with Texas was you would have thought they'd benefit more from the actual one because they'd get a bye. But knowing what Ohio State became, which wasn't really expected because they had that Michigan game, they would have ended up being worse off because of it. Probably would have ran into Ohio State when they were really buzzsaw mode there those first couple weeks of the playoff. But yeah, Oregon has to sit there. If you're a fan of Oregon and just be ticked off that you You had to play Ohio State in the first round, where Ohio State decided to play in a completely different stratosphere
Yeah.
than they had played the entire season.
And they had played Ohio State, I don't know, what was it, week 8, week 9 in the regular
Yeah,
season.
not early in the season. It was
And that was
later in the season.
and Oregon won by like 1 point, 2 points. So like they knew that they could play with them. And they had given Ohio State a loss already at home, granted, that Oregon.
Neutral site doesn't mean 40-point difference.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, I completely agree. So, but yeah, no, I'm excited to see what this new format brings. I don't think that we're going to have a G5 team like a Boise State this year, though. I will say that much. There might be one that's, that's flirting with the top 12 in the top 15. But I don't think we'll have as good of a Boise State team. It might be Boise State again. They've got their quarterback returning. They've got a lot of guys returning. It's just not Ashton Genty's team anymore. It's going to be a different look of Boise State. You might have a New Mexico team, or I'm sorry, what was it, Vegas, a Las Vegas team that's
UNLV.
UNLV that's playing really well again, or who knows? I don't know what the G5 teams, what they're going to look like this year.
Yeah, those are the hardest ones to predict, just because of that's where the transfer portal is. Kind of both it helps those teams, but it hurts them too. They're able to bring in sometimes some of these talent that were 4 or 5 stars.
Yeah.
Don't maybe, make it real quickly at one of those top schools, and then go down to one of these schools with a chip on their shoulder. So you maybe get a little bit more of a talent pool, but at the same time, it really comes down to making that all mesh.
And you don't have that longevity. You typically have one good season with those guys before.
Yeah, and so maybe we get a random Coastal Carolina year, or
I think Tulane's been a program that's been putting together consistent seasons.
Aren't they? Or no, was it Tulane's quarterback went somewhere and made a bunch of money, or did Tulane bring a quarterback in and pay a bunch of money this year? It's so hard to keep up.
Yeah, good luck.
The portal, but maybe that's a summer project, trying to predict who the G5.
That's an algorithm and an equation that I'm not sure I'll be able to figure out.
Yeah, just take a crack at it, then laugh at how dumb we look.
Right.
When the actual season plays out. But it's hard to say you're going to have one like Boise State last year, because they had a Heisman candidate top 10 draft pick.
Well, and what's funny is the hot pick last year, Liberty, everybody was putting in permanent ink. Liberty is going to be the 12 seed in the college football playoffs. And that G5 team is going to get that auto bid, and it's going to be Liberty. And it was Caden Salter, who's going to be at Colorado now. So that ought to be interesting.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, I know it. I only know this because I just did the top 10 quarterback list, and I went through a lot of teams to figure out who I wanted in my top 10. But anyway, I think this is the format. Jake, I agreed with you. And I kind of wanted to rewind and put a bow on the conversation, but also kind of rewind and make a full circle moment, 360. And when you mentioned about going to the 16-team playoff, and how you and I, we've both been very adamant about, well, they do it at the FCS level, they do it at the NIA level, they do it, and that's typically 16 or 24 teams that they put in there. I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate, a little caveat for you. How many different national championships do we get even at the FCS level? There's 3 teams that are consistently competing for a national championship, whether that's North Dakota or South Dakota State. And
we had a Sam Houston year in there.
You could throw a Sam Houston year in there every now and then, but
no, you're not wrong. You could argue there's been more parity recently at the FBS level than you see at that FCS level.
Yeah, and I think that there's less parity. Not less parity. There's more talent at the FBS level for obviously, but at that top tier, can you win a national championship level? 4, 5, 6 teams tops, maybe.
Yeah. And that's why again, if it was me choosing, I would keep it at this 12 team.
Yeah.
I'd probably keep the format as it's going to be next year.
I love this format.
Because
I want to see this format for next year play out completely. And I really hope that everyone's like, you know what? We're kind of satisfied with this.
Yeah, it's not going to happen because of money and TV deals. But And I know some people are going to go, well, why should there even be a G5 automatic bid? If there's not going to be a G5 automatic bid, get rid of the G5. Have them compete in their own FCS2 or
Yeah.
something, FBS, 2 or some type
FBS
of
Division Two. No, yeah, no, I'm
yeah,
with you.
FBS Division 2 so that they can play for a national title, because otherwise what's the point of playing a season and going undefeated, not having a chance to play for a championship? Because at the
I'm
end of the day,
almost
it's still college football, and honestly, it's still a sport. And when you go undefeated, or you have a great season where you should have an opportunity to play for a championship, you deserve the right to at least see if you can.
correct. No, that I 100% agree with, and I wouldn't mind even if they made it kind of a that FBS Division Two, kind of like a Premier League, where you can jump up into FBS Division One and compete for a national championship, and you get graded on the same level in terms of. And then look, if you're not good and you suck, then you get bumped back down to that FCS level.
That
And
that would generate more money for some of those schools that are on the brink
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Because you're going to get a big money jump if you go up into that FBS Division 1.
yeah,
So you get a Ryan Reynolds and Rob McAlely to enter to invest into your
100%,
program, and all of a
100%.
sudden turn things around.
Yep.
You can have a welcome to Sam Houston State
You know?
on Hulu.
Yeah. Yep.
So that is I do like that idea. I think that you have to get away from the NCAA to do that, but that might be where we're already trending anyways.
Yeah.
And college basketball, you could, if anything, it's just like football should separate from the NCAA, because clearly football has become too much for the NCAA to operate. I mean,
Yeah.
they aren't doing anything right now.
They have the NCAA with football is like they've got their hands full and they're trying to hold like 20 different soapy, slimy, different like hard things to carry all at the same time. And they're just fumbling it around and they're dropping pieces and they're trying to pick up other pieces and they're dropping other ones while they're trying to pick up another piece. Football is just, they're overwhelmed with the amount of revenue and the responsibilities and the money and the recognition that football is gaining.
And the
They're
conference demands as well.
right. Basketball, they're kind of starting. The transfer portal is absolutely absurd at the basketball level, but I don't know if you can control that one way or the other, just because there's so many players that are so good at these smaller schools. There's just more players that slip through the cracks in basketball, flat out, plain and simple.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's ever going to be
Because
something that
you have what,
you have,
12 kids?
and you've got 5 scholarships to give out every year. So
Yeah, it's just, there's always, I mean, it was like at the college we went to, the basketball team was legit good. We had some guys that went and played pro overseas and
yeah,
won MVPs of
and in
legit
Euro
pro
leagues,
leagues over, over in Germany, over in Europe. And, those were legit players. I mean, those were dudes who we saw play against Division I teams in exhibitions or regular season or early season games and score 30 points.
yeah,
In football, when you go against a Division I in an exhibition, there was nothing like that. It's
no,
just a very
no,
different sport. So you're
sure,
always going to have that talent that falls through the cracks. But maybe if the NCAA didn't have to think about football too, they could do a little bit
sure,
better job of enforcing some things in basketball,
yeah.
putting together some transfer portal rules, because every coach wants it. Even the big school coaches want it, that may benefit more than they hurt from it,
Well,
just because they don't like it.
Well, they're tired of Ohio State and Texas and Alabama and Georgia just picking off of each other. They're all picking off of one another, and there's tampering at every level all over the country. There's just tampering. It's all it is in the offseason. And I think, quite frankly, they're probably all sick and tired of it, to be honest with you.
And they probably need to regulate these agents too for players, because
That's
players
I
are
think
getting
that's probably more so anything is these sports agents, and that can be a conversation. I don't want to get into that right now, but the sports
no.
agents is probably something that needs to be way more regulated than NIL, than transfer portal, than anything else. It's the sports agents. Those are the ones that probably need to be put on a much tighter leash in general, or just completely out of the game. I know these are
I mean,
professional
they're the ones
athletes
who
now.
are the lead of this tampering and why
Yes.
this tampering kind of happens through a loophole is you go through the agent demands money, the agent charges a absurd fee to the players.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a very slimy situation.
And
A
they're
lot of
not
stuff that we can get into
Yeah,
that more
they're
this
not
summer, but
they're not taking 2% like they do at the professional NFL level. They're taking more like 15%, and it's
I
absurd.
think I've heard up to 25%
Yeah,
or more,
that's
depending on the player and the school and what have you.
wild. All right, Jake, let's go ahead and wrap up this show. Tomorrow's episode, we're actually going to release tomorrow's episode early. Women's softball has an 11 o'clock game against Florida in the College World Series. So our episode is going to be previewing that game, but we're going to drop it at 10 o'clock instead. So a little bit earlier of a release for Thursday's episode. So make sure you stay tuned into that. And then before the game gets going, instead of watching whatever pregame is on, turn it on to All in Horns. You'll get a much better pregame, strictly just talking Texas, Florida, what this game means moving forward, and kind of some of the way the bracket's going to set up, win or lose, what Texas would have to go through. And so one bracket in the Women's College World Series, there's a little bit of a balance issue when you really look at the two remaining brackets. There's a bit of a balance problem, but Texas is on the wrong end of it too as well. So anyway, for Jake Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. That is going to do it for today's episode of All in Horns. Please like, share, and subscribe. Remember, softball episode coming out early around 10 a.m. Tomorrow, and then we're going to get into baseball on Friday before their game as they take on Houston Christian. Right? Yeah. Houston Baptist. So, all right, that's going to do it. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.